Tom Campbell here. If you find something of significant value in our videos, please consider supporting their production through our Patreon account or through a one-time donation. The links are in the description below. Thank you and enjoy the video.
Good afternoon, Tom, and thank you for being here again for our Tom Campbell Answers Your Questions. Our first question is from Toby. I've seen a few studies where certain common parts of the experience of shifting data streams, such as the sensation of going through a tunnel or the sense of looking down at one's own body, have been replicated in isolation by physical methods, such as stimulating a specific part of the brain or what have you. How does this fit into MBT, and does it mean anything for determining the validity of any given experience?
Well, the reason that someone looks down and sees their body is because they have a belief that they are a spirit living inside their body. And when they exit their body, there they are. They're going to be in the same room, in the same vicinity as their body. So if you have that belief, then that's your intention. Your intention is to get out of your body and to be floating in the air, maybe above your body. So then that's what happens, if that's your intention. Now, if you don't have that belief, if you don't believe that we are something, living inside our body, then there's no need to ever have that experience, or you wouldn't naturally have that experience because you wouldn't expect to be by your body. You just expect to be someplace else as you grab another data stream. So those things have to do with the expectation and the beliefs of the individual. Now you put somebody in a I don't know what, MRI or some kind of machine, or you're going to do something to them. And if they have this belief that they will go out of their body, or if the experimenters have that belief and tell them, well, we want to see if you're going to go out of your body and if you can look back and see your body. If that's their mindset, then either they can do that on their own, regardless of the machine. But if the machine is actually doing something, then what it's doing is it's suppressing the intellect. There's a lot of drugs that do that. A lot of anesthesia, they suppress the intellect. They don't necessarily suppress the intuitive side. As you recall, we have two different paths of processing in consciousness. One's the intuitive side, the other is the intellectual side. Okay, well, if you can inhibit the intellectual side in some way, and that can be done with drugs, and at the same time, energize the intuitive side, then it's going to be very easy for that intuition to be elsewhere, be out of body, or be getting data, or remote viewing, or doing whatever its intention is to do. Partially, I think that's what happens when people take hallucinogens. The hallucinogen suppresses their intellectual side. Now, whether it actually boosts their intuitive side or not is kind of irrelevant, but all it has to do is suppress that intellectual side. And then if they have intentions and so on, then that's what'll happen. Okay, so that's, I think, what's going on. Now, either the machine is suppressing the intellectual side somehow, or just the thought that it might be enough for a person to get out anyway.
Well, Tom, would that speak to some evidence as consciousness is more fundamental than the physical? If some brain stimulation can suppress the intellect, but not the intuitive side or the consciousness?
Well, that just depends on, it probably depends more on biology than it does on consciousness. The avatar constrains by the rule set what the consciousness can do with that avatar. So the consciousness can only do with a particular avatar what the rule set allows them to do with that avatar. All right. Now, if that avatar has been given a drug or is put in a machine that suppresses their intellect, okay, then the consciousness has to work with that. That's a instead of adding a constraint, that's removing a constraint. You could think of it that way. If you think of the intellect as a constraint on the intuitive side. So I think it has to do more with the body, with the avatar, and the fact that the rule set then will change the constraints that the consciousness has to work with that particular avatar. So I think that's what's going on. I don't think it really proves that consciousness is fundamental. It just means that you can modify an avatar and modify the constraints that the consciousness has. But we know that already, that it works. It works that way. That's why the avatar, in order to, remote view or get data from the database, that avatar has to get its mind quiet. It has to be able to get, remove its thoughts, get its intellect side to go away. And it does that generally through meditation. Binaural beats then make it easier. And I bet some drugs or some other things probably affect it as well. So more biology than consciousness here.
Doesn't mean anything for the validity of any given experience.
No, I don't think it really means anything in particular for the validity of any given experience. Experience just is. Experience doesn't need validity. If you have an experience, then that's your reality. That experience is your reality. And if you make choices during that experience, then those choices help you evolve or de-evolve, depending on whether the choice is a low entropy choice or a high entropy choice. And that's true no matter how you get your experience. If you have an experience in a daydream and you make choices within that experience, that affects your evolution, or a night dream, or in everyday waking life, or any other thing you can think of. The choices you make, no matter what reality you find yourself in, will affect your evolution. So that's really the same. It's not like some experiences are real and other experiences are bogus. Experiences are just experiences. For whatever gets them there, they are experiences. And how you interact within that experience, the quality of your interactions in that experience, has an effect. So all experiences are good experiences. All experiences are information-based. The experience is just information that you're interpreting. All information is equally real. So it's not like, what we have here is real, but night dreams and daydreams are not real, or night dreams are more real than daydreams, or, all of that is just not so. That's, we might think of it that way, but that's really not the way it is. All experience is information-based. All information is just information. It's the same. So no, I don't think it really has any impact whatsoever on the quality or value of any particular experience. So you get in a big machine and that machine does something, it suppresses your intellect perhaps, and now you're out loose running around, doing things. So what? That's how you got there. It would be much better for you to learn how to do that on your own. Then you wouldn't have to go get in a big machine in order to have that happen. You could do that whenever you wanted to. You could do it at will. That would be a lot better. Or you could take a drug and the drug can do a similar kind of thing. And those experiences aren't fake experiences. They're just, they have, every methodology has its downside and probably its upside. And taking drugs and getting into big machines have a pretty big downside. what else is it doing to you? How else is it affecting your brain, or are you going to get cancer because of that radiation? It just depends on what the machine. If it's a CAT scan, then that's X-ray radiation you're getting there in your brain. If it's an MRI, then it's very high magnetic fields. And what does that do to you and your body and your health? So there's downsides to that. Besides, it's probably expensive. I suspect to go crawl in that big machine costs hundreds of dollars to do so. And so it's not a matter of valid experience and invalid experience. It's a matter of finding ways to get the experience you need that are most effective in your learning.
Thank you, Tom. Our next question comes from Joe in Australia. Over my lifetime, I have very strong memories of conversations that I've had, and people later deny or have no knowledge of what I'm talking about. Some of these are about traumatic events that may have happened in the past, but some aren't. Recently, I was part of a conversation where I was convinced one family member was swearing at another, but when I spoke to them separately, later, neither one of them knew what I was talking about. Is there an explanation of what this might be?
Yes, there is an explanation. And I do things like that and have experiences like that all the time. In fact, sometimes I watch entire movies that really don't exist yet. And then, 6 months or a year later, the movie comes out and I've already seen it. And, I did that when the, what was it? I guess Lord of the Rings movies came, or The Hobbit, or one of those movies came out. And Pamela says, "Oh, this movie just came out last week. Let's watch it." And I say, "Well, we already watched that. We watched that like 6 months ago." And she says, "No, we didn't." And I said, "Yeah, we did. Don't you remember? We sat right there in that seat and we listened." And she says, "No." And I said, "Well, why are you so sure?" And she says, "It was just released this week. That's why I'm so sure. It wasn't available unless you got it on some, underground site or something." And I said, "No, I did not." So I remember sitting there watching a movie with Pamela, and I could tell her what's going to happen in the next scene. And I knew the whole movie. I have also had information that I attribute to having watched it on a YouTube video. I said, "Oh yeah, I had a YouTube video that told me that." I remember it really clearly, and I searched and searched and searched for that video, and it just doesn't exist anywhere. And I think, well, okay, they took it down. But that happens enough that I don't think they're taking it down. I think this is information that is given to me because it will help me learn, help me understand things. It'll give me choices. It'll present a challenge. It helps fill in information, something I need to know. And I think the system just gives that to me, and it gives it to me in the format of, say, a YouTube video, because now there's YouTube videos, and it'll be real easy for me to think that I saw it in a YouTube video instead of, oh, that was handed to me by the LCS. It flew down on little wings, and, a projector popped out and I watched the movie. That makes it all fantastical. But the system can give us information. And if it can do that kind of quietly, privately, if you like, so that we don't really know, we just know the information, but we're not really sure what the source is, then the system would rather do that, because that keeps our ego from getting involved in the process. So that's why it would rather do that. So I'm convinced that many times the things I see on YouTube that I can never find again actually were given to me by the LCS to get some point across or to give me some information. And they turn out to be true, just like that movie. I mean, I did see the movie, and I can say, oh, look, next scene, you see that big rock? There's going to be some kind of monster, jump over the top of that rock and land right on, I don't know, whoever the hero was. And sure enough, right then, that's what happened. So I had seen the movie before. Now, parts of that movie had been made, no doubt, for a year. It takes, a year or so to make those movies. So a lot of the film had been taken and it was processing and so on. But I saw that a good 6 months before it was released. So it was probably in the process of being made at the time but I saw the whole movie just as it was when it was released. And how does that happen? I don't know. The system maybe gets it out of the future probable database. I'm not sure. Maybe there's a storyboard already set up for the movie and the system knows what it's going to be like. Maybe the people who are making the movie are not that hard to guess what they're going to do. They've made a lot of movies and they have a pattern and a style. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but if you're getting information and you'd swear that it was, happened in this world between those people, not always. Sometimes you just get that information. Maybe you saw those two people swearing at each other or having words with each other or being unkind, just because that was a lesson helpful to you. What would you do in that situation? How would you react? What would that mean? It gave you a situation where you could make a choice or respond to it, react to it, without it actually having to happen and cause problems for those two people. So it gives you opportunities to have experiences that you wouldn't have otherwise. So yeah, life is like that. The more you live in the bigger reality and not just in the little physical reality, the more your life is just going to be full of little things like that, synchronicities and knowledge that you have, memories that you have that have just been handed to you for your own education. So accept it, learn from it, and don't argue too hard or too strenuously when you say, well, I remember you two, getting in an argument with each other. And if they look at each other and go, no, didn't happen, just say, okay, and let it go. No sense pushing too hard on that because they may be right. It maybe didn't happen here, but it did happen in some other reality where you were, at night, who knows where that was, while you were daydreaming, a nighttime thing, and whether you call it out of body or whatever, or you're just getting a data stream from the LCS. I'd just leave it at that, data stream from the LCS, then it's less complicated.
Thank you, Tom. That's very interesting. It's a possibility also that it's a future probability, and Joe may get some more downloaded information on that.
Right. It could be a future probability, and then the probabilities change and it doesn't happen.
Yes.
Yeah, you could be seeing it that way. But,
really interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, life is like that, Joe. Just might as well get used to it. If that's happening to you several times, it will probably continue to happen all the rest of your life. So it's just it's when you live in the bigger reality, it's a very interesting and fun place to be.
Well, thank you. Our next question comes from Paul. Approximately a year ago, I was lying in bed, still awake, but tired at around 3:30 a.m. Suddenly, I had the feeling that the pillow would start circling around my head very fast. No, I wasn't drunk. I wasn't fearful, but maybe I thought I was too tired for such a strange experience. Suddenly it stopped, and I think I fell asleep again. Some months ago, I found myself in the same situation, nearly in the same stage at night. And the feeling that something within my brain, or at least around my head, is turning fast was back. As far as I remember, I accepted it more the first time. It wasn't new anymore. But once again, it stopped after some seconds. Do you have an idea what this could have been and how to properly approach the situation if it appears again?
I can take a guess at what it could be, but I can tell you how to approach it. My guess is that something was traveling fast around your head is your interpretation of the data you get. It doesn't mean there was something fast going around your head. That's just your interpretation of the data. Something probably happened to you that I don't know, maybe made you feel a little, well, dizzy isn't the right word, but a little detached, a little withdrawn from your reality or only tenuously connected to your reality, and you interpreted that as something going around your head, a metaphor. When we look at cartoons, if somebody is dizzy or has been bonked on the head in a cartoon, what do we see? We see a swirl of stars going around their head, right? That's a metaphor for being kind of, I don't know what, not real focused. If you're not real focused, then that's kind of the default metaphor, something that sometimes it's little birds fly around going tweet, tweet, tweet. Sometimes it's stars, but sometimes it's just a circle of energy. And when we talk about somebody being silly or something, what do? We do this round a circle around a head, right? And that indicates that they're a little out of it. They're not. So the circling around a head is just a metaphor, and you're interpreting whatever you get in terms of that metaphor, because you don't have any metaphor or anything that can really interpret it very well. We have experiences that are outside of experiences we've had before, and we don't know how to interpret them. So we pick up some metaphor that's kind of the closest thing that we can come up with, and that's what we interpret it as often. And sometimes it's not really a very good match, because once we're out of this reality, it's not that unusual to run into things that are just outside of our knowledge, outside of our experience, and we don't know how to interpret them. So probably something like that was going on. It's more your interpretation rather than something was actually doing that. Now, what should you do next time it happens? You should relax, go with it, feel it, experience it, and then in a very, can I say, non-excited, but in a very even, with a very even attitude, so just ask, what is that? What does that mean? What is it a symbol of? Can you tell me more? So just, in other words, explore it. Embrace it first, because if you don't embrace it, it'll just disappear. You need to embrace it, which means, there it is. Okay, I'm with it. I feel it. There it is. Zing, 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 zing. I'm feeling it going. And you get it nice and steady. And once you're nice and steady with it, you've embraced it. Now you can start asking questions about it and see what it is, what it means. What's the, if it's a symbol, what's it a symbol of? It's a metaphor. What's it a metaphor of? And just see if you can't then understand it through exploring it. But first you have to embrace it. If it frightens you, or you think, something's wrong with me, maybe my brain is imploding or something that is a bothersome thought, a negative thought, then it'll tend to just go away. Or you'll wake yourself up, or you'll get out of that state. So better to just embrace it and then work with it, explore it.
Oftentimes you get little symbols that you can't immediately interpret. You might get something that it could have a lot of interpretations to it. So that advice was very good. So for instance, you get a profile and it zooms in on someone's ear. Does it mean, so I'm listening to you? Does it mean you should listen more? Does it mean you need to hear this? There's a whole kinds of there are all kinds of interpretations you could get in this few seconds. So sticking with it, focusing on it, not just taking a quick, that must be what that means, but really engaging it would be the way to get more out of it.
Exactly. Telepathy often occurs in metaphors. It tends to be very metaphorical. So our dreams. Dreams tend to be very metaphorical. And understanding what the metaphor is, like you say, is not always obvious. And what we tend to do is exactly what you said, is jump to conclusions. It's better to connect with it, embrace it, and then slowly investigate it. And if you're not quite sure and it disappears on you, then try to reproduce it. You know, the next night or something, say, all right, let's go back to that. I want to go right back to where I was and get the same sense and the same feeling and the same whirling around your head, and then embrace it and work on it. Just by thinking of something, you can tend to bring it back and repeat it. So you may work on it 4 or 5 times before you really figure it out. But it's probably a metaphor for something.
Yes, and that's really good advice. And I don't think you need to actually visualize it the same way you visualized it the first time. Just bring back the image in your imagination, not expect it to something to happen again. Would you say?
Yeah, well, that's one way. Just try. All of this work on the intuitive side is experimental. You try things and see how they work. But you don't just try them for 2 or 3 minutes. You know, you maybe spend 2 or 3 days or 2 or 3 weeks trying something. And if that doesn't work, well, you change it a little bit and try it again for 2 or 3 weeks. And if that doesn't work, you change it around a little bit and try it again for 2 or 3 weeks. You have to take the long view, and you have to just experiment and see what happens.
I think that's how you got a lot of your research, a lot of your conclusions. You delved into it very precisely and did that very thing.
Yes.
So thank you. The next question we have is from E. When we were younger, we seemed to have a profound sense of awe and wonder at the world and existence. And as we conceptualize and name the world, this sense seems to greatly diminish. How does the MBT model interpret wonder? And how can we bring that sense of awe back into our reality?
Well, we have that sense of awe and wonder because we are experiencing new things. We're learning new things, particularly when we're very young. We don't know much. You know, we come in and we don't know a whole lot. We have some instincts and we have some proclivities because of our biology, but we basically have to figure everything out as we go. So when we're young, everything is a new adventure. Everything is mysterious. Everything is magical. You know, you hop into an automobile and off you go, flying down the road. You know, how is that possible? To a young child, all of that is just magic. We don't know how anything works. Stuff just happens and we don't know. And then one day we figure it out. We see, you know, we get a picture of an internal combustion engine and we see how all the things move and we go, oh, that's what's going on. Okay, you know, and you feel satisfied that we're growing and we're learning things. So how is it that you regain that kind of sense? Well, just start learning again. Start seeing the things that you need to see, you need to understand. Look at your interactions with other people. And any time you see something negative going on, realize, oh, that's a fear. That's my ego. Those are my beliefs. Oh, I need to do something about that. That isn't good. And you might think, well, that's negative, but it's positive, because if you're seeing that for the first time and you're just noticing it and you think, well, I need to fix that and I'm going to work on it till I do fix it. And you work on it every day. You know, you work on that and you fix it and you feel really good about it. You feel, wow, that's good. I'm different now. I've changed. I don't have that button that can be pushed anymore. So you need to look at life and things and events and people and how they are and the state they're in and growing, the state you're in and growing. And all of it is actually pretty amazing. What we're doing here, how we learn, the events and how we interact, and the things that are going on. And the more of a big picture you see, the more, wonder you'll probably find in it. That this system could actually work like this. That we're here with a benevolent, larger consciousness system that is trying to help us out because as we evolve, it evolves. So it wants us to succeed. So there's this interaction with source that's going on. And, that's very inspiring once you see it and understand it and get it, not just that your intellect. The intellect doesn't get very inspired about anything. It's not the intellect that has that inspired feeling. That's your intuitive side. That finds that, oh wow, look at that. That's your intuitive side. Not so much the intellectual side. The intellectual side looks at all the facts and goes, okay, got it. Let's go on to the next thing. That's kind of the way your intellect sees life. Whereas your intuitive side is where your emotions are. And your intuitive side feels those feelings of awe and isn't that fantastic? Those kinds of feelings. So you gotta open up that intuitive side, turn it on, and start looking at the big picture, and you'll find the big picture is awesome. It's got a lot of things that will give you that same kind of a feeling.
That's great. Thank you, Tom. E follows up with, sometimes fear can prevent me from initiating an experience in NPMR. That's non-physical matter reality. But I cannot recall an experience I've grown from in which I have not felt some initial fear which required courage to overcome it. How do we get the opportunity to deal with our fear in NPMR productively if the fear itself is preventing the initiation of the experience? I've tried to hold an intent with courage, but at times that's not enough to initiate the experience in NPMR.
Just keep trying. Growing up is not an easy thing to do. And we try and we try and we try again. And we approach it differently. We get our courage up and ready, and then we go do it again. And don't be bothered if you fail 10 or 20 or 30 times or more. Just keep doing it. Have this positive attitude is, I'm going to get through this point. And I'm going to try it every which way that I can think of to get through this point. Maybe I'll just take it in stages. Maybe I'll just get to the point where I meet the monster and I'll say hello and then I'll leave. I won't run away, but I'll leave right after that point. Next time I'll meet the monster, say hello, and then hang around for, a minute or two before I leave. Find strategies, find ways to work up on it slowly, to make little bits of progress. So it's not just a 1 or a 0. You're either totally fearless or you're full of fear. You can work it in smaller steps if you like, but just keep working on it. Different paths, different ways, different strategies, and let the strategies come to you in a meditation state. The right strategy will come to you. Just open yourself up and say, I seem to have an impasse here. I seem to have this block. What would be a good strategy to get past it? And maybe you'll get something from the system that way. But if not, just figure it out on your own. But the key is, don't be discouraged by failure and just keep on trying. Growing up is a difficult process. It's not something that, you say, well, okay, I see the problem. Now, I'm going to get over it. And if it's generally not that easy. It generally takes a lot of effort and a lot of failure before you get it. And often you just get it a little bit at a time. And it isn't until you look back that you realize that you've changed a lot. You have grown. So keep working on it.
Thank you, Tom. And thank you for your questions also. We'll see you again next time.
Tom Campbell here. I and MBT Events hope you liked this video. We now have well over 1,000 hours of free video on this user-friendly, ad-free YouTube channel. Though these videos are free to our viewers, they represent many thousands of hours in production and editing, and many thousands of dollars invested in video and audio equipment, along with the required computers and software to store and process the raw video into finished products. So far, all of this content has been funded directly out of our own pockets. Be assured, we will always continue to do what we can. It's our life, our purpose, a labor of love that we will continue to pursue as best we can. However, those pockets are not as deep as they used to be. Thus, we are now seeking to augment our resources with support from our viewers. If you find something of significant value in our videos, please consider supporting their production through our newly created Patreon account or through a one-time donation. The links are in the description below. Thank you.